Hello, my name is Brittany Garcia. I work for VMware by Broadcom, and today's video is going to be all about HCX. So I'm going to start with a slide or two, but then I want to show you the actual software that makes up HCX. And this video is meant to be a level 100. We already have some level 200 plus HCX videos on this channel, so feel free to check out the HCX playlist to find some of those. For now, let's just get started on trying to understand the basics of HCX. So HCX is an application migration software that comes bundled with AVS, and it simplifies migration across data centers and clouds. HCX sits inside of the vSphere UI, and that is something that I will show you today. So HCX has multiple tools that allow you to move from your on-prem data center into the cloud as seamlessly as possible. So some of those tools are doing things like vMotions across multiple vCenters that aren't connected through linked mode. Bulk migrations, if you want to do large-scale parallel migrations with IP changes. And HCX also allows us to do layer 2 extension, which gives us the ability to move VMs into the cloud without changing IP addresses. So those are some of the things that HCX allows us to do, and depending on what your requirements are for migrations is ultimately how we decide to set HCX up. So a couple things to note here. The HCX Cloud Manager is going to be kind of auto-deployed. So once you get AVS, there's going to be a section in the Azure portal where you can go and select HCX and then hit the deploy button, and it'll deploy everything it needs to in AVS on the cloud side. Now, the HCX connector on-prem is something that you will set up on your own. So there's a lot of documentation out there about how to set up HCX on-prem. And you also have your VMware or Microsoft resources, and we can always step in and help you during the installation process. Usually the on-prem setup takes a day, like a good solid day, sometimes 2 or 3, depending on network hangups. That's usually the biggest blocker we run into. So we usually request a networking person and a vSphere admin to be on the call while you're deploying this on-prem HCX connector. So on the right-hand side, you'll see some HCX requirements. As of March 2024, HCX supports vSphere from 6.5 and up. There are a few different connectivity types to use HCX. Some that I have listed are Azure ExpressRoute and VPN and SD-WAN. And then in terms of the VMs that you're moving, some things to be aware of. If you're using bulk migration, the VM or set of VMs that you're moving must be on vHardware version 7 at least. And then if you're going to be doing vMotion, RAV, or cold migration, those VMs need to be on vHardware version 9 at least. So now let's talk a little bit more about HCX, and then I'm going to jump right into the UI. HCX has 2 component services. The HCX Cloud Manager that sits in AVS, and then the HCX Connector, which sits in your on-prem data center or perhaps another cloud if you're going from cloud to cloud migrations. And these 2 components work together for HCX operations. The green and gray box is showing something called a service mesh, which you would set up once HCX is installed. And you can think of a service mesh as kind of like an app store. You essentially pick the services, or in this example, apps, that you want to use in the service mesh setup process. So a quick rundown of the little green boxes that are sitting inside of the service mesh. These are appliances that are essentially going to help us with our migration. And if you notice, there is a eye on the left side and there's an R appended on the right side of each appliance. So the left appliance would be the initiator, and the right appliance, the one that's in AVS, would be the receiver. So these are always going to come in a pair. You won't always necessarily have this exact setup of appliances. Every service mesh is different depending on the need, the use case. But what you will consistently see is an initiator on-prem and a receiver in AVS. And those appliances will show up in your vSphere inventory. IX is responsible for vMotion, bulk migration, and cold migration. WO is WAN optimization. It does dedupe and compression, which helps speed up the migrations. And then NE is network extension. So if you want to just do bulk migration and plan to re-IP, then you won't need network extension as part of your service mesh. But if you do plan to keep the same IPs, you'll need the network extension appliance to accomplish layer 2 extension. And just to quickly demonstrate what happens once you have all these services set up, the VMs that were on-prem or in another cloud are able to use that service mesh, transfer over the IPsec tunnel and into AVS. So next, let's take a look at what HCX actually looks like in your vSphere interface. So I wanted to start kind of from where you might possibly start and take us through how to get to HCX. So once you install HCX, you'll be able to log into your vSphere client and navigate to your HCX dashboard. So just to show you around, we land on the dashboard when we click that HCX button, and the dashboard shows us an overview of what we have going on. So this is the on-prem side of things. So we are seeing all of our site pairings. We have our Globex environment, which is what we're considering our on-prem environment. And then we have a site pairing to, looks like Santa Clara. We have a site pairing to Amsterdam. And then we have a site pairing into Singapore. And I'll show you the section where you will generate your site pairings. There's this button up in the top right corner. So we have our Globex environment reaching out to 3 different locations, and these are all of our site pairings. Next, I'll walk us through the interconnect. So this is where you would come to create your service mesh, and I have an entire video on how to do this. So I walk through setting up network profiles. I walk through setting up your compute profiles. And then I walk through the whole service mesh interface and setup. So you can see in this environment, we have 2 service meshes. Next, I want to walk us over and just peek at network extension. So we also do have a video on how to set up network extension. And the reason you would use network extension is if you wanted to create a connection between on-prem and AVS and not have to worry about changing IPs, so that you can send VMs over this network extension and not have to re-IP anything. Next, I'll walk you through migrations. When we do a migration from on-prem to AVS, we want to start that on-prem. So even if we wanted, and this is a kind of a tricky thing with HCX, even if we were in AVS and we wanted to move a VM back for some reason, we want to move it back on-prem, we would initiate that from the initiator, not from the receiver. So this is always going to be the initiator, the on-prem side of things. And this is where we would come to initiate the migration to AVS and to initiate a reverse migration from AVS back to on-prem. So I'll probably end up making a part 2 to this video where I'll go into depth about setting up the migration and all of the various settings that are involved. There is kind of a lot that goes into setting up the migration. So I'll make a part 2 for that. And otherwise, if you have ideas or questions, things that you would like to see, drop a comment below. And thank you so much for watching. Have a good day.